Hey everyone, welcome to Three Mystics at a Round Table. And of course, as always, delighted to have Sally Taylor and Gary Langley here with us from the Soul Explorers podcast. We really love getting together and seeing how spirit unfolds our conversations. So today we're going to be talking about our changing world. Now, if anybody hasn't noticed, well, you should have noticed by now, things have changed. And I was thinking about this morning in the shower and how that when for Gary and I, in our when we grew up, the world was in many ways very innocent. Sure, there was turbulence and things that happened, but it was a very innocent time where you in the morning you went outside and played all day, and then your dad whistled at the door to come home for dinner, and you just enjoyed nature and outdoor and going to school and having friends. And so it was very innocent but also very tied into the 3D reality of growing up, going to church, those kind of things. So our world has definitely changed. I don't know if everybody else has noticed it, but the world is changing. And I think where the biggest change is for me that I'm observing, and you guys can hop in whenever you feel led to, is there definitely seems to be what I call a timeline split on consciousness. There's those moving toward heart centered living and those moving into self centered living or ego or I don't know another word to say, but sort of that kind of um, split. So, what do you guys think about the whole timeline split? Have you thought much about that?
Absolutely. And I think it's why we are experiencing so much dissension and headbutting in our society, because there is a split, I believe, going on. From and some are going more to the materialistic side. That might be the word you were looking for. And some of us are going more to a heart-centered. But we have an excellent opportunity right now to really change the consciousness of the planet if we choose to take it and move forward with it. So, Sally?
And you mean with love,
Oh,
move
yeah,
forward
absolutely.
into heart centered living? Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely see things changing for sure. And I don't know that I fully know how to define it. Calling it a split is definitely one way to go about it for sure. What I see more than anything is a shift toward awareness of people's true nature. But then as that occurs, I think the contrast between those who are gaining that awareness and those who are not seems more and more obvious or more extreme in nature. And so I I don't know where it's necessarily going to take us. I know a lot of people talk about a new earth, and a lot of people talk about, again, like you said, a timeline shift where maybe all who are kind of going in one direction of perhaps spirituality or self-awareness are going to be separated somehow from those who are not. Um, I don't go that far just because I, I don't have a good way of understanding how yet that could truly occur. But I'm very encouraged by the amount of the population of Earth who is reconsidering what they understand to be reality and the nature of reality and their role in it. So that's the
I
shift that I see.
I asked a source about that, and the people moving to heart-centered reality, it's still a relatively small percentage, but it doesn't take 50% of heart-centered people to counterbalance the negative, perhaps 50%. I hate to peg anybody as negative, but I'm saying the other end of the split, where it's a more materialistic, me kind of, attitude. Um, so something is happening, something is shifting. And that's what I meant when I said we have a great opportunity in front of us if we take it as a race, as a whole. So
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I think it was something that popped in my head, Sally, when you said about, well, are we just going to split? Do you know what I mean? The service to self and the service to other selves. Do you know what I mean? Because in reality, they're a reflection. If we are the mirror, they're a reflection of something we're needing to learn within ourselves. And we know that we can see, well, I've held that attitude before, the bitchy attitude. Do you know what I mean? And I've been there before, and then being able to choose to love that in that other person because that's their journey. And it's okay for them to have hold that at the time, because that is what's going to be their teacher, because their mirror is going to draw into them the exact kind of energy back toward them until they choose differently. So maybe it's just looking at what's happening as the teacher rather than a split, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. But definitely times are changing. That's kind of our big topic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the earth is definitely going through her own changes, and we are absolutely part of, as with our human bodies, part of that system, going to experience those changes as well. But I tend to be a glasses half full kind of girl. So as I see people becoming more spiritual, as I see people becoming more willing to try things like meditation or yoga, even, or, any of these things that at one time in our culture, those were often deemed as somehow, evil or wrong or, whatever. As I see people being more exploratory for their own consciousness, that to me is encouraging.
Very good. I'm thinking, in many ways, like the three of us here, in some ways, we were sort of ahead of our time. Do you know what I mean? Ahead of the times. Now, mediumship is becoming very, very, you can't go on YouTube without seeing somebody channeling, somebody, doing mediumship work, that kind of thing, or doing psychic work or that kind of thing. Whereas when I was first waking up 30 years ago, 32 years ago now, uh, that was just so frowned on. Like you said, Sally, it was just frowned on, and I walked away from fundamentalist Christianity toward divine love, but I didn't know where that was going to take me. But I became a seeker at that point. And so I think maybe the changes that are happening in the world is people are finally looking within and saying, this life doesn't feel good. These experiences don't feel good. And maybe the idea pops in their head, like it did for us on some level, something's got to change.
Yeah. And I also can't escape any understanding of this or can't escape's not the right word. I can't separate any understanding of what we're seeing without the shifts that have also occurred in technology and communication. There was a time when I would not have had access to people with all of these ideas and understandings. There was no YouTube when I was a kid. There was nobody teaching other ways of thinking about identity or consciousness or anything besides the family unit that I grew up in and the church that I was raised in, right? But we live in an age of information now. And of course, we know it can be used for good, and we know it can be used for not good, right? We know it can be manipulated in all kinds of ways. But the fact is that it's easy to find if you are looking now. And when we were growing up, that was not impossible, but it was certainly more challenging.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah
and
it's
go
it's
ahead.
also why we um, do things like this is to,
Right.
not to convince anyone, but to put the information out there, give people options to say, oh no, how do I want to live my life? Do I want to be greedy and selfish and go after money all the time? That's all my focus is. Or do I want to be more heart-centered? Do I want to live a more peaceful life? So yeah, that's why we do this, so that people can weigh their options. So
Well, I agree. And I think spirit, at least I found this, and I'm sure you guys have found this as well, where what you need to hear will pop up on your feed, on your YouTube feed, or something that really moves you or moves you into your heart through this internet, this information, that when we connect with it is a tool of spirit as well, not just a technology that has a two-dimensional meaning, because people are putting it out there, their energy, their life, their love, their joy, whatever is coming through that exchange as well. So I believe it has been a tool of spirit to awaken humanity and open
Yeah.
people up.
yeah,
Yeah. I'm not sure it could have happened under any other circumstances. I think that widespread ability to communicate was maybe a condition that was needed.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And if you look back, if we go back before internet, what was it? It was books.
right.
People reading books.
That-
And you had every book on the shelf, and then you didn't have time to read them all, but they were sitting there waiting for one day when you needed to read that one particular thing at the right time. So I think everything has played a role, even with scripture and ancient texts and folks writing down their experiences and their connection. That's how the information came, word to word, and then words on paper. Now, words spoken on screen, and that evolution. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves in that connection, and how spirit uses whatever technology is coming online to assist people in their journeys.
And there's another aspect to this too. I think energetically in our solar system, I mean, look at all the solar activity that's going on. That's having an effect on consciousness, I think, or potentially has an effect on consciousness. So we're seeing more things like the portal that's opened up on the Casa de Santa Maria. And I mean, we have to be discerning because there's a lot of stuff on YouTube that is junk or generated by AI for somebody's greed, because they're wanting to get thousands and thousands of views. So it's sensationalized. So be discerning when you're scrolling through that material. But I think we're seeing energetically the earth going through its own metamorphosis as well. And that is affecting us. So opportunities are open. That's the feeling. The strongest feeling I have is that there's a great opportunity here. We're in the midst of it. And either you grab the reins or you turn around and walk away. So we have the choice, free will.
Right. And I don't think either choice is a bad choice, because it
Yeah,
is where someone needs to be.
sure.
But what I see the change happening is a lot of people are following this 3D, what we were entrained to do: get a job, make money, buy cars, buy houses, have a family. And people pour their whole lives into that and make that happen. And at the end, it feels, at some point, it starts feeling empty because
Yeah.
it's a persona our ego has created based on what the world expects from us.
Right.
And so I think the change that is happening is people are looking at that. They get to the end of something where they go, I can't do this anymore. I'm not the authentic me. I'm this persona. I'm this boss. I'm this title. I'm this whatever. And they get to the end, and that's almost like the when the light comes in, or the breaking point that says there's got to be something better than this, which I
And
think is key.
also, I've never heard anyone sit up on their deathbed and say, I didn't go to work enough. I've never heard of anyone saying that. So generally it's the opposite. Oh, I should have, expressed my love more. I should have, told my kids how much I love them. Do it now. Don't wait, you know.
Exactly.
And is anybody noticing, though, that young people are already coming in suspicious of that story of you must, go to school and go to college and have a family and, get a job and all of that stuff? I think our young people have already become very suspect of
Mhm.
that storyline. And so I think there is also a shift in the souls that are coming into Earth right now. It seems, and I have a chill as I'm saying this out loud, so I'll keep going with this. It seems like they are as much a part of this shift as anything else that's going on,
Mhm.
and that they will actually be a big part of, hopefully, uh, keeping the boat going in a direction that we want it to go, because they're less convinced by that old story of what they must be.
Mhm.
Anybody know any young people that are also giving them sort of that encouraging sense?
Yeah, no, I've experienced that as well. I think there's great potential there, and some of them, I mean, we're not here by accident at the time we're here. We're the three of us are here for specific reasons at this time on the planet. Um, and so are they. They've come in at a time of great transition. I don't envy them because um, the world's become a even harder place. We've got more comforts and more technology, but has that made life easier or harder? It's hard to say. I mean, there were simpler times. So,
I agree. And then I think for me, as the world is changing and we bump up against the folks that are not in their hearts, do you know what I mean? It's choosing love in that moment.
Yeah, because it can be hard.
Mhm. And not
It can be
attacking
hard.
or not
Right.
allowing it to drag you into their energy, you
Yeah.
know,
right.
of that, to really be able to master holding divine love no matter what's happening out in front of you.
And that could be a two-way, I'll make a joke here, a two-way mirror because when they bump up against you, it can have two reactions in them. They can say, wow, I feel really good around this person, or this person brings me a sense of calm, or it can inflame where what they're already dwelling in because it exposes, it is a mirror. We are mirrors for each other. So it can have either reaction, and whoever is the stabilizer presence has to take that into account, that not everyone is going to respond positively to heartfelt, existence. So it's two sides to that coin, but it plants a seed. And even if they come up against it and it's disruptive to them, a seed's been planted that may sprout later on down the road.
So if we take this into an individual realm, when we're triggered about something, the universe or spirit or whatever you want to call it, God creator is showing, or we are doing it, We're drawing that experience that triggers us for us to choose to go inside and say, why is this trigger me? And what needs to be healed? And so there's this old dichotomy of the persona we've created, the ego of how we present ourselves in the world and how we're making ourselves feel good in the world. And something comes along to challenge that ego. That's where the disruption comes. And if people aren't ready to go within, see what it's triggering in self and what needs to be healed, then that just keeps happening over and over and over and over again until someone finally says, wait a minute, maybe I need to change, not the world needs to change.
Right. Right.
That's it.
Well,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gary.
oh, I was just going to say, I heard somebody saying, I love this phrase, is that what we judge in the world will continually come back to us until we no longer judge it. So we have to learn the lesson, or we're in a loop. We just keep repeating and repeating.
Right. And I'll
And been
take
there,
that.
done that.
Yeah. And I'll take that back to what Susan said about healing. If we're triggered, it's because something that is unhealed has been hit again. And I'm the first to admit, I've thought sometimes that I had worked through an issue I knew that I had. I'm like, oh, finally, this is something I've finally taken care of. And then, wouldn't you know, it comes back around again. Oh, it still hurts. I'm still triggered. I obviously didn't fully, completely heal that little bit. And so I get to visit it again. And that's just the nature of growing in these ways, is that sometimes, even when we think we've got it down, we think we're good to go, we find, oh, there's still some little bit hanging on, or that we're hanging on to, that needs that healing, that needs that surrender we've talked about in the past, right? And then when it comes back around the next time, if you can look at it objectively and just say, oh, I see you, I remember that, but not be harmed and hurt and pained by it, that then you're truly healed. Then you're good to go.
I'm hearing that song, Hello Darkness, My Old Friend.
Yeah.
And that's true, just the layers of it that we're ready to look, and it heals when we're ready. But what I've found that gets really exciting, which I think is the core of what's changing in the world, of those people that are willing to go into the unhealed darkness and make friends with it and choose to love it. And once you're able to do that, then you're able to love the outer world, because you start to love the inner world, even the broken and the dark things that you find within yourself that you've been wanting to hide or not look at or not expose, and making friends with them and loving even that.
And that brought, just popped into my head. What prevents us from going within? Why do we shun looking at that fear? It's fear. And so if we can overcome fear, realize what you are can never be harmed, can never be hurt. And I'm referring to what you truly are, spirit. Um, Once we can put that fear aside, then it becomes easier to examine those dark corners. So,
Right. And I think that the fear is that I won't be loved if someone else sees that darkness.
yeah.
So what's transforming the world is really love. And it happens on an individual basis. So like all of us have seen so many people waking up, so many people interested in these topics of what happens after death. Where do we go? Those are the beginning stages of awakening, where we realize that the world isn't what we thought it was, and are willing to explore the unseen world that we invite into our lives and start engaging with that.
And it's also very interesting to see science. I come across news articles all the time. Consciousness is not what we thought. Consciousness probably does survive beyond physical death, and here's why. And they'll have a scientifically, you know, paper or whatever about it. Um, but yes, it's there's a huge transition going on. There just absolutely is. It's exciting, and these are interesting times that we live in.
So the question
Yeah,
is, where's it going to go? Go ahead, Sally, and then we can.
well, and actually that was the good question, because that's where I was going to go with this conversation, is that there's no endpoint to it.
Yeah.
Right? Once you begin that expansion, it just continues. There's no destination in this. It's ongoing. It is an eternal growth pattern that we never actually leave, even when we leave the body.
Mhm.
So that's the thing. You hear people saying, "Oh, I've awakened," as if it was a goal point that they had to get to, and they got there and it's done. There's nothing left to do. And I always kind of chuckle when I hear that, because that means they're just stepping foot onto
Or
that path.
they've reached a plateau, but there are many plateaus beyond that.
There are many. There are
And
many.
that's the thing that and I heard somebody saying they didn't like the word enlightenment because it points to a finality, which doesn't exist. There is no finality. You can always go further, higher, expand more. So no end to it. Exciting journey.
Indeed, it is. And, what you were talking about, Sally, what made me think of it's very easy to fall into the trap of spiritual ego. Of I've learned all this and I've experienced all this and I'm there. You know what I mean? And then once you put a limit on it, you can't see beyond it until you're willing to let go of that spiritual ego. But the universe loves us enough to pound us when we've gotten ourselves stuck in a belief system that has kept us from moving forward. Now, I know once you see, you cannot unsee.
Yeah.
Once you've experienced, you cannot unexperience. And the enlightenment is that experience, not an endpoint of, okay, I see that now, when you didn't see it before. So I think, to me, that's what enlightenment is just those moments of seeing something you've never seen before, integrating it, and then going on to the next enlightenment point where you see something you didn't see before.
Right. And I think that's the nature of expanding awareness, for us, on this particular journey, as a group here, small group of individuals, we've worked to expand our awareness to more subtle fields of experience. But even when we're fully into those subtle fields, there will be even more subtle fields to expand into. So again, it's not a destination, and it's so exciting. It's so much fun to
And
have those new experiences.
and then to take those expansions and incorporate them into how you are in the world. That is part of that journey. It's not just reaching a level of understanding or awareness, but then bringing that level of awareness into your day-to-day existence. And that can be challenging for some people.
Right. So this kind of reminds me of, in this awakening process or enlightening of these experiences, of our path of moving out of third dimensional consciousness, which is the only thing is here and now in the material world. And this is the only thing I focus on, is me, myself, and I, to moving into the fourth, which is opening the heart, moving into gratitude, compassion, that work where we start seeing more service to others than service to self. And I think that's that step. And you guys can put your thoughts into here this as well. But as we move, because everybody says, well, we're moving in the fifth dimensional consciousness, you've opened the heart in the fourth dimension, where you realize there's something more than myself and I'm interacting with it, and you invite that in. But the fifth is about the hard work of transmuting the distortions or the wounds that we received in third dimension and removing those. So I think that's what, to me, that's what the fifth dimension is all about. That's the fifth dimensional work is all about, recognizing the unhealed, distorted parts of ourselves and being willing to face those darkness, those things, those hurts, those wounds, and have them transmuted.
And that's part of what I was saying too about the process of integrating the newer levels of awareness into your daily existence, and that it's all tied together, I think, and realizing that we're all energy and we're all interconnected, and that allows us to allow people to be where they are on their journey without judging them, because we're conditioned to judge. And we have to, I was talking to somebody yesterday. We come in wide open to this life, and then we get conditioned. And then if we're lucky, a light bulb goes off, and we spend the rest of the life getting rid of the conditioning to get back to that pure state of awareness again, which is an interesting journey that we take. So.
Yeah, and I like that journey. And it really is getting back to that innocent child
Yes.
self. And that's why healing the inner child wounds is so important in the journey. Not pushing away that child that got wounded or did not get unconditional love or whatever in childhood, is to going in and reconnecting with that innocent self, because that innocent self is your teacher.
Mm-hmm.
It's your authenticity of who you are, and bringing that forth. So like Sally, when you said joy and fascination, that's your inner child saying, I want to play in this environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the piece of you that doesn't have story attached to everything.
Right.
Right. It's that part of you that, as you were saying earlier, I think both you and Gary said, it's that pure self that doesn't have all of this sort of.
Oh, Sally froze.
Sally froze. She will be back.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, I've got an unstable connection. I'm sorry.
Um,
But anyway, so I think maybe you got what I had to say, was just that it's the story we wrap around the things that we experience, that prevents us from accessing that inner child.
and I would say the more we pursue awakening, whatever you want to call it, enlightenment. Like I said, I don't usually use that word, but um, it gets to a point where even the difficult things in life are just part of play. It's all play. And they don't impact you in the same way they used to when you were the conditioned self following the rules, Newtonian paradigm lifestyle. And I think that's shifting. That Newtonian paradigm is kind of on the way out in many ways. With quantum physics and what we're starting to understand, I find it fascinating that science is kind of coming along. It hasn't quite made the connection yet, but it's really drawing close to seeing realities that 20 years ago people would have said you're crazy, but they're beginning to wake up.
And I think that's part of the shift. I think
Yeah.
science has to come along in order for that shift to occur as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. So it is exciting times to be living for me, because I think the world is ripe for change. I think that people are starting to say the old way of doing things isn't working. It's not making my life better. Yeah. And so you start going within and really, and I think that's the key, because the kingdom of heaven is within. It's not out there. And so we look at our world, and the reflection it's giving back to us is what we see. There is good and bad, and it's where we put our attention. And what changes the world is us putting our intention on our own inner healing, our own inner light, our own transformation. And that's why the world is changing, I think.
Exactly.
And as Spirit used to say, light attracts bugs. So the more light that each of us individually bring into the world, and light I equate with love, divine love. Maybe light is the effect of divine love. Not sure yet, still learning that one. But the more you become that, that's what's changing the world. And that's why our world is changing. And I think it's happening in a quiet, underneath way in individual lives, and not people out there with fanfare and standing on boxes and, trying to change the world that way, but just everybody doing their own inner work.
Yeah, Susan, I totally agree with that. I think the old way, and we were conditioned to this, was to go out and change the world. And you can't. Nobody can change the world. I mean, we've seen a lot of people try, and they may have some effect, but we can, on the other hand, change ourselves. And that has a ripple effect in the world. And if enough people do that, then we've really accomplished something. So, yeah, and I think you said that very succinctly.
Well, it's kind of exciting to see it finally happening. So 30 years ago, 32 years ago, when I woke up, it was very entrenched in heavy third dimensional consciousness. There were a few awakened people like Terence McKenna and Alan Watts, and some of these what I call forerunners. In some ways we're kind of forerunners in that our work, we're getting now to the level that we're starting to see and really let go of the persona and just be, if that makes sense, in the world, and work on healing our unhealed wounds, and then holding that light for the planet rather than going up and standing on a soapbox and saying you need to change, to just emitting that love.
Yeah. And history tells us that standing on the soapbox and preaching to people about change doesn't work. It really doesn't. It's got to be an inner transformation.
Now,
Sally,
that does not negate teachers. It
no,
does
not at
not
all.
negate those that are called to share their knowledge of what they've learned.
Absolutely.
That's the thing.
That's service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're giving us service, just like we do with podcasts. It's there. If you like it, take it. If you don't, leave it alone. It's fine. Our feelings are not hurt either way. But have you ever considered? So, Sally, you were
Right.
about to say something.
Well, I was just, because I'm a teacher by background, I have a lot to say about teaching. And it's just that for me, a true teacher just shares their experience. They just say, here's what I did. Here's my journey. Here's my story, even if we're going to go back to this idea of story. And here's how it shifted me. Here's how it changed me. You might try this, you might try that. Do the thing that's right for you. Take what resonates with you, leave the rest. Those are the teachers that have the biggest impact, is the ones that just share the experience so that others can see, the next step on the path. And not every teacher is right for every student. and vice versa.
And I think that's why there's so many different teachers, because then spirit, your higher self, will lead you to the person that best resonates with where you are to get the message across. Because I think resonance is really, really important when it comes to teachers. You know, years ago, it used to be about the guru, you know, and I don't think it's about the guru anymore. It's about finding the inner teacher.
It's about the mentor, I would say now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not about, you know, somebody who you almost deify and put on a pedestal. It's about somebody who's also traveled the path and had experience and can say, wow, you'd be amazed. You know, A plus B for me equaled C, right? And so it's as if you're equals rather than, you know, even student teacher, to be honest. And that's what I think is perhaps the most successful with how things are shifting, is that hopefully we're not putting these teachers or these experiencers on pedestals. We're just seeing them as examples.
Yep.
Right.
They're human, have foibles too.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Yes.
there definitely was a time where we would put the teacher, the medium, whatever, on a pedestal. That's part of the phase of waking up to this stuff. But then you realize, no, 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 we're all equal. There's nobody better, and that will keep you humble. That will keep your ego from in check if you realize you're no better than anybody else. You know, um, we all are spirit. We are all connected. So
Well, I just recently had, in some ways, had that experience, because Milt was the one that introduced me into divine love. What divine love was. Through him, that's what I discovered divine love. I put him on a pedestal, and whenever he behaved in human ways, I would get so angry because no, you're not supposed to be that. You're supposed to be divine love. And it finally shifted and realized he was the doorway through which it came, not the um, energy itself, if that makes sense, as a human being. And it shifted things so big because I would get so mad when he behaved in a way that was human, you know, and I kept saying, why am I so angry about this or that kind of, and I really went within and realized that's what I had done. I'd put him on a pedestal, which takes us to Yeshua
yeah,
in where we are now. When we're asked to follow me, we're asked to follow the path that he walked, not the persona, not the individual. Follow the path that I walked, and I will walk beside you on that path. At least that's what I've discovered. And so we're shifting in, I think, even in, although a lot of people are now going back to church, which I think is really good, because I always consider religion spiritual kindergarten, where you find your connection with the divine, and you graduate from it just like you graduate from kindergarten, to move on to other things. But there's also this, I don't like to use the word danger, but I don't know what's a danger of getting stuck there with the persona on the pedestal and thinking I can never achieve that. And so I have to be dependent on this being to carry me through, instead of taking sovereignty for your own journey and asking for help to walk the same path. Hope I explained that well enough.
yeah. In my journey, there was a phase of going to Unity Church, and one thing I always really they never referred to Yeshua as the Savior so much, but the way shower. And I always thought that was really succinct. He's the way shower. So,
It's going to be interesting to see how everything shifts and unfolds in the future around religious belief systems that are very stuck
Mm-hmm.
and how they're going to be challenged. I mean, we see that even happening today. The challenge of belief systems, are these correct? So you get the wide swing of the pendulum one way and the wide swing the other way. And how do you find that center point where, as we've talked about before, there's God and good in everything. And if you're looking for the divine, you will find the divine, whether it's in nature or in church. It's more about the individual seeking, not the protocols or practices of religion. What were you going to say, Sally? You had things going on in your head.
Well, I just you brought up Yeshua shortly after he was in my mind about the exact same things you were saying, in that it's not come here to be worked
Oh, we've lost.
at me for saying such a thing, right? But he is our brother, and you're right. He is the way shower, and he told us that we could do everything he did and more. So if that's the case,
Yeah. And that gives me God
obviously,
bumps. That gives me God bumps there, because how much often we've told we can never live up to. We
Right.
can never be. We're always going to be this sinner. We're never going to be good enough.
And that thought will keep you stuck right there because those thoughts are really powerful. And I was using the analogy the other day. I had won a scratch off ticket, and somebody said, "Well, I never win." I said, "And you never will because you keep saying you never win. And it just won't happen. You're creating that reality for yourself." So, yeah, it's we don't realize how powerful we are and how much potential we have. But I think there is a transition coming. I think the next 5 years is going to be extremely interesting on the
And
planet.
who knows how it's going to happen? We talked about this earlier before we started, was this whole concept of ascension, of what does that mean and what is it? And I was sharing with you guys that I don't know that it matters,
I
because we're
can,
going to experience whatever happens without us having to wrap our brains around it. It's more about holding the love for whatever happened, holding that love within ourselves, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen without us defining it, whether
yeah,
it's flash of light or half the people leave the planet, or I don't know. There's so, just like religions, there's so many religions and there's so many different versions of what ascension is going to be. And
well, I've got the right one,
okay, good.
which is it's your consciousness coming into that love state to where you don't have to even think about it. You're there, you're living that all the time. And is it possible? Yes, it's possible. Everything is possible. But as far as people disappearing from the planet, that all goes back to somebody's story. And it's human created stories and dogmas and belief systems. I always say belief implies doubt. I want to know. And I was, of course, joking when I said I have the correct answer because, but that's my perspective on it is that it's the raising of consciousness. It's that you actually, I would say in the last 15, 20 years, I'm not anywhere near the person I was 15 years ago. I mean, it's transformed. And I expect if I get another 15 or 20 years, I won't be the same as I am now. It will have expanded more. So I think that's really the ascension is when enough people do this that it changes the reality of the planet to a degree.
I
So
agree 100%. And I think it's more like changing the frequency of who we are.
exactly
And
what I'm
maybe
saying.
there's a little, and I'm not sure about this, but ascension means rising.
Mhm.
but I think it more means integrating higher frequencies into the physical plane. That's what we came here to do, not to leave it. You know, for many years, a lot of people like, gosh, I can't wait to get out of here. It's so painful. I don't
I'm
want
never
to
coming
I
back.
can't wait for the ascension so I don't have to live in this. And
Yeah.
really what that means is so I don't have to look at my stuff. So I don't have to heal myself. So I don't have to feel this in the running away from instead of running into. So maybe the ascension is that process of bringing those higher consciousness down into the physical world, which is what we came to do instead of run away from it.
Beautifully said, Susan. That was gorgeous. That was just great. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. It's a raising of the frequency, not only individually but planetarily. Yeah,
Absolutely.
And remembering that you already are all of that.
yeah. You just
Absolutely. I think we can end that there. That's perfect. And so maybe if universe allows us to still be together doing this next, where are we, September? We can
yeah,
see what we can do our changing world to see what has shifted in the world in this coming, year, because I do see what a speeding up, a rapidness of consciousness happening in the world, and seeing how that either divides in a good way, because I think the division is okay, because people are choosing their path. We literally are choosing our path right now. We are in the middle of choosing the path. Will there be two separate worlds? I think we'll exist together, but maybe we'll find coherence. It won't be the extremes. It will be a coming together and working together instead of the extremes. And that's okay.
I
and
like that
and
vision.
and just keep in mind too, everyone watching this, that because a lot of people are very distressed and fearful about what's going on in the world on the physical plane, and often it's darkest right before the dawn. That's an old saying, but it's true. So we may be seeing the tension right before an awakening aspect. So keep heart.
Right. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. It's been so lovely engaging with you, and we'll see you next month.
Sounds great.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye bye.